Hey friends, welcome back. Today we're jumping right back into some entitled people stories. We're looking at 3 separate stories, different people, different situations, but we're not just reading them and moving on, we're putting them side by side. One is about a homeowner being pressured to inherit a tradition she never agreed to. One's about a workplace bully discovering that behavior doesn't stay contained. And one's about a parent trying to take control where they had no right. Stay until the end because once you compare these 3, a very clear pattern starts to emerge. I bought a house, not a haunted house tradition. I bought my house a couple of years ago, and at the time it felt like the perfect fit. Quiet street, solid construction, decent-sized yard, and close enough to schools that the area felt safe and stable. The only major difference between me and most of the neighborhood is that I'm child-free. That didn't seem like a problem when I signed the papers. It didn't even cross my mind as something worth considering. What I didn't know when I moved in was that I hadn't just bought a house, I'd apparently bought a legacy. The previous owners, who everyone still refers to as the Smiths, were local legends. Mrs. Smith had been the elementary school librarian for decades. Mr. Smith taught health at the middle school and announced high school football games. They were the kind of couple who knew every kid's name, showed up to every school event, and were universally adored. They had one daughter who was killed by a drunk driver in the late 90s when she was 16, and the loss shook the entire town. The high school theater was named after her because she'd been deeply involved in choir and drama. When the Smiths retired and moved to Florida, the football field was named after Mr. Smith. Their names are still everywhere. What no one bothered to mention during the buying process was Halloween. Apparently, the Smiths didn't just decorate, they went all in. Every single year, they built an elaborate themed haunted house in the garage. Sometimes it extended into the house itself, with kids walking through carefully planned rooms while neighbors volunteered as actors. Planning started as soon as the school year ended. Mr. Smith spent summers building props. They took theme suggestions from neighborhood kids. People came from other neighborhoods specifically to see it. It was a whole thing. I learned all of this on my very first Halloween. I was actually excited. I remembered how cool it felt as a kid to get something different while trick-or-treating, so I decided to hand out cans of pop instead of candy. I wore a witch hat, set up a little table at the end of my driveway, put out a battery-powered cauldron I'd picked up at Spirit Halloween, and dressed my dog up like a dragon. I thought it was cute. I was proud of it. Within the first hour, the comments started, "Oh wow, this is where the haunted house used to be. We used to come here every year. It was incredible. The Smiths really spoiled these kids, didn't they? I remember when you could walk through the whole house." One guy laughed and said, "We used to drive over from 2 neighborhoods away just for this place. Shame it's gone." By the end of the night, I felt like I'd hosted a memorial service instead of a holiday. People weren't being outright rude, but the constant comparisons wore me down. It felt like no matter what I did, I would never be enough because it wasn't what they used to have. I went inside early, turned off the lights, and tried not to let it get to me. I figured that would be the end of it. I was wrong. This year, it started weeks before Halloween. Kids asked me directly if I was doing the haunted house. Adults hinted. One woman told me her husband would be happy to help me build it. Another neighbor said it would be so nice to keep the tradition going. I kept smiling and deflecting, saying I hadn't decided yet, hoping the conversation would die naturally. Then today, someone posted anonymously in our neighborhood Facebook group. The post went on about how much the neighborhood had changed, how kids had lost so much time during COVID, how important it was for the community to step up and create memories for them. It specifically mentioned traditions that had disappeared, including the haunted house on my street, the block party, and the 4th of July bike parade. The tone wasn't aggressive, but it was heavy with implication. The haunted house wasn't just a decoration, it was framed as a responsibility. I read the post twice, feeling my jaw tighten. I showed it to my mom later that evening, hoping for some validation. Instead, she sighed and told me I was being a grumpy old lady. She said I didn't understand how hard it is to be a parent, that kids needed joy, and that I should at least try to do something like the Smiths did. They didn't even have kids, she added. If they could do it, why can't you? That comment from your mom cut deep, because it took the one thing that should have supported your side, you and the Smiths both being child-free, and used it against you. It turned their personal passion and act of grief into a moral obligation for you. That's the part that really stuck with me, the assumption that because someone once chose to give generously, everyone who comes after them is obligated to do the same. Here's the thing, I'm not anti-Halloween. I decorate, I hand out good treats, I smile at kids in costumes and tell them how cool they look. But I didn't sign up to fund, build, and host a walk-through haunted house for an entire neighborhood, let alone open my garage or my home to strangers. That takes time, money, planning, liability, and energy, none of which I have any interest in committing to. What makes it worse is that this neighborhood isn't lacking effort. People decorate heavily. There's a 12-foot skeleton down the block. Another house does a Stranger Things-themed yard display. Fake graveyards, lights, fog machines, it's all here. What's missing isn't Halloween spirit. What's missing is one specific attraction that belonged to one specific couple. And I'm tired of being treated like the villain for not replacing them. I didn't take anything away from this neighborhood. I didn't cancel a tradition. COVID did, and time did, and the fact that the Smiths retired did. I bought a house, not an unpaid volunteer position. If parents want their kids to have the experience of building or walking through a haunted house, they are fully capable of organizing one themselves, just like the Smiths chose to do. So here's where I landed. I'm going to keep doing what I already do. I'll decorate my yard, I'll hand out fun treats, I'll be friendly and polite, but I'm not building a haunted house, and I'm definitely not opening my home to the public. If someone wants to revive that tradition, they're welcome to do it on their own property. If that makes me the grumpy lady on the block, so be it. I'd rather be known as the woman who set reasonable boundaries than the one who let guilt turn her home into a community expectation. And our second story. Good luck getting hired at my company. I'm a 26-year-old guy working as a program coordinator at a large defense contracting company. It's not some small operation or casual workplace. We're a 1,000-person organization that supports military contracts, logistics, and infrastructure. Everything runs on clearances, background checks, internal referrals, and reputation. Who you are at work matters. How you treat people matters. And once something is flagged, it follows you. I take my job seriously because it took years to get here, and I don't mess around when it comes to professionalism. My girlfriend is 22 and works as a bartender while finishing her final year of university. She's quiet, sweet, and the type of person who apologizes when someone bumps into her. She remembers regulars' drink orders, stays late to help close, and genuinely cares about doing her job well. She's not confrontational and she hates drama, which unfortunately made her the perfect target for someone like Megan. Megan is one of her coworkers, late 30s, and somehow still stuck in a mean girl phase she never grew out of. When they work together, Megan openly swears at my girlfriend in front of customers, snaps at her if she makes even the smallest mistake, and talks down to her like she's incompetent. If my girlfriend forgets to garnish a drink or ring something in twice, Megan makes a scene, then immediately runs to management to report her. My girlfriend has tried everything, documenting incidents, talking to the general manager, asking for schedule changes, and every time she's brushed off with vague promises that never turn into action. There were nights she came home completely broken, crying into my shoulder, asking me why she was being treated like this and what she did wrong. She talked about quitting constantly, about how anxious she felt walking into work when she saw Megan's name on the schedule. I reassured her every time. I told her Megan was trash, told her she didn't deserve any of it, and reminded her that finishing school came first. Still, it hurt watching someone I love get worn down by a grown adult who enjoyed being cruel. One afternoon, I stopped by the restaurant while my girlfriend was working behind the bar. I wasn't there to confront anyone. I just wanted to grab a drink and say hi. Megan was there too, leaning against the counter with her usual smug posture, along with another younger guy who worked there. We all started chatting casually, talking about school and career plans. Eventually, the guy asked me what I did for work, and I told him I was a program coordinator at a defense contracting company. Her face lit up immediately. He turned toward Megan and said, "Oh, hey, didn't you apply there recently? Didn't you apply for that company?" Megan froze for half a second before nodding and quietly saying, "Yes." I kept my tone friendly and asked what position she applied for. She answered that it was a warehouse role and avoided eye contact entirely. That was it. That single sentence told me everything I needed to know, and I didn't say another word about it. I finished my drink, kissed my girlfriend goodbye, and left like it was just another normal visit. That moment at the bar was pure luck, and it gave you all the power. Megan's coworker accidentally handed you the perfect piece of information. Her quiet answer and frozen reaction showed she knew her own behavior was a problem. It told you exactly where to aim, and you didn't have to do any digging at all. That night, I asked my girlfriend what Megan's last name was. She asked why, and I told her not to worry about it. The next morning, I went into work and handled my usual responsibilities before walking down to the warehouse manager's office. We're not friends, but we've worked together long enough that he knows I'm not dramatic or petty. I told him that someone named Megan Blank had applied for a role in his department and that I felt obligated to give him a professional warning. I explained that she had a consistent pattern of workplace hostility, harassment, and conflict escalation, and that if she made it past screening, he might want to examine her references carefully. He didn't question me or argue. He thanked me for the information and said he appreciated the heads up. That was the end of the conversation. I didn't follow up, didn't interfere further, and didn't push anything behind the scenes. I simply let the system do what it was designed to do. That was 2 months ago. Megan never got the job. She's still bartending at the same restaurant, still working the same shifts, still stuck exactly where she was. Meanwhile, my girlfriend's workplace atmosphere has noticeably changed. Megan's quieter, less aggressive, less eager to tear someone down now that she knows not every environment tolerates her behavior. My girlfriend comes home smiling again instead of crying, and that alone tells me I did the right thing. I don't feel guilty. I didn't lie, sabotage, or fabricate anything. I passed along truthful information to someone responsible for hiring at a company where behavior matters. If Megan wants a better job, better benefits, and more stability, then she needs to learn how to treat people like human beings. Until then, she doesn't get to export her toxic behavior into professional spaces where it can hurt others. Some people think consequences are cruel. I think consequences are educational. And judging by the fact that she's still exactly where she started, well, I'd say the lesson landed just fine. The best part is that Megan doesn't even know for sure what happened. She just knows she didn't get the job, and your girlfriend's life got easier. The consequence was quiet and perfect. Megan's now stuck in the same job she hates, maybe realizing that her behavior has real-world limits. Your girlfriend's peace of mind was the only proof you needed that you did the right thing. And our last story. My estranged father tried to sell our houses. My mom died unexpectedly at 50 years old, and nothing about the aftermath has been easy. There was no long illness, no time to prepare, and no will. One day she was here, busy and opinionated and planning her next project, and the next, she was gone. I was still trying to process the shock of losing her when everything else started unraveling at once. My mom was incredibly independent. Over the years, she had worked hard and smart, and by the time she passed, she owned 5 properties outright. No mortgages, no liens, fully paid off homes that represented decades of work and sacrifice. She wasn't flashy about it, but she was proud of what she'd built, and she had always talked about making sure my sister and I were secure. My sister's 30, I'm 32, and we are her only children. Our parents separated more than 10 years ago, and their relationship was long over in every way that mattered. They were never married, never reconciled, and never shared finances after the split. During those years, my father went on to have other children and live an entirely separate life. We had very little contact with him, and what relationship existed was strained at best. That's why what happened next felt like getting punched while already on the ground. Not long after my mom's death, we found out that our father had been speaking with lawyers, not to help us, not to check on us, but to figure out how to take control of my mother's estate. According to what filtered back to us, he was attempting to sell 2 of her properties and place the remaining 3 into a trust that my sister and I wouldn't be able to access. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, staring at my phone, trying to make sense of that sentence. He wasn't on the title to any of the properties. He wasn't married to her. His name wasn't on her accounts. He wasn't even listed on our birth certificates. And yet, he was apparently acting as though this was all his to manage, sell, and lock away from us. Grief does strange things to your brain, and for a moment I wondered if I had missed something obvious. Maybe there was some legal loophole I didn't understand. Maybe I was wrong to assume that my sister and I automatically inherited everything. But the more I looked into it, the more alarming his behavior became. He was talking like he already had authority, like it was only a matter of paperwork before he took control. Your father's plan was based on a bluff. He was betting on your grief and confusion, hoping that if he acted like he had authority, you wouldn't question it. It was a power play that only works if the other person doesn't know their rights. He was selling a story, not a legal strategy. The emotional toll of it was brutal. Losing a parent is disorienting enough without finding out the other one is actively trying to strip you of what your mother spent her life building. My sister and I were fielding calls, exchanging screenshots, and panicking in private conversations late at night. We weren't thinking about money in the abstract. We were thinking about our mom and how wrong it felt for someone who hadn't been a part of her life for a decade to swoop in like this. Eventually, we did the only sensible thing and contacted a lawyer. We went in with documents, timelines, and a lot of anxiety. I explained the separation, the lack of marriage, the properties, and what we'd been told about our father's intentions. I expected a complicated answer. What we got instead was calm, blunt reassurance. Our lawyer told us very plainly that our father had no legal standing. He wasn't married to our mom. His name was not on the title to any of the properties. He was not listed as a beneficiary anywhere. And because they had separated over 10 years ago, he was long past the window to apply for any kind of division of assets. In the eyes of the law, he was a stranger to her estate. When someone dies unmarried and without a will, the estate passes to their children. In this case, that meant my sister and me evenly. There was no trust he could create, no property he could sell, no authority he could claim. Any attempt to do so would be illegal, and any lawyer worth their license would shut that down immediately. That single legal term, no standing, was the key that unlocked everything. It wasn't a loophole or a fight. It was a simple fact that made his entire plan vanish. The law saw him as a stranger, and no amount of bluster could change that. The most powerful thing your lawyer did was not to attack, but to simply point out the obvious truth he was ignoring. Hearing that didn't erase the stress, but it did shift it. The fear gave way to anger. The idea that he thought he could bulldoze his way through our grief and take advantage of our shock was infuriating. The lawyer advised us to act quickly and protect the estate, so I filed for a grant of administration to formally take control of my mom's assets on behalf of myself and my sister. Once that paperwork was in motion, everything changed. Suddenly, the conversations he was having didn't matter. He couldn't list a property, he couldn't transfer a deed, he couldn't create a trust. Any attempt to interfere would leave a paper trail that could come back to bite him hard. We never confronted him directly. We didn't need to. The legal reality spoke for itself. From what we heard through extended family, his tone shifted quickly once he realized he had no leverage. The confident planning turned into silence. No more talk of selling houses, no more trust fund fantasies, just quiet retreat. The whole experience was exhausting and surreal. We were mourning our mother while simultaneously having to defend her legacy from someone who had walked away years ago. It forced my sister and me to grow up very fast in a very ugly situation, but it also clarified something important. Our mom had built her life intentionally, and even without a will, the law recognized that. In the end, her estate stayed exactly where it belonged, with her children, and the man who thought he could rewrite that story learned the hard way that grief doesn't mean helplessness, and silence doesn't mean permission. Each of these stories is about someone trying to claim something that wasn't theirs: a neighbor's time, a coworker's future, a child's inheritance. In every case, the person on the receiving end didn't have to fight dirty or get loud. They simply stood their ground, knew their rights, and let the system, whether social, professional, or legal, do the heavy lifting. Sometimes the quietest no is the most powerful. Which resolution do you think hit hardest? Cast your vote in the comments. Story 1, 2, or 3. Thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.